Good morning, everyone. I think we're ready to get started. All right, we're going to call the meeting of the GCRTA Executive Records Management Committee to order. It is 11:07, and this meeting has been scheduled pursuant to the Ohio Sunshine Laws. Notice of the meeting was posted and also posted on the RTA website in accordance with those requirements. Deborah, can we please have the roll call?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Sean Gatto.
Here.
Cheryl Benford. Present. Dr. Kaber.
He is here, but he may just stepped outside.
Here.
Here.
All right, we'll look at the agenda. The next item is the review of the November 15th, 2021 minutes. The minutes from that meeting were previously sent to the committee. Are there any questions, comments regarding those minutes?
No.
If not, do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Do I have a motion to approve? Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the minutes are approved. Just for the record, it needs to be noted that the primary functions of the Executive Records Management Committee is to review applications for one-time disposal of obsolete records and to review record retention schedules and schedules for disposal of records. If my understanding, Shari, correct me if I'm wrong, but we do not have any schedules of record retention and disposition.
Correct.
And there are no applications, Form RC3s, for one-time disposal of obsolete records.
RC1s and no.
RC, thank you.
No problem.
All right, moving on very quickly into the old business section. Shari, for these items, I am going to turn over the proceedings to you.
Okie dokie. So we'll call 1210 GM Executive. Mary, want to come to the podium? Yes. That's okay. While she's making her way, included in the packet are the previous notes from 2017. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review and refresh their memories. From those suggestions in 2017, when India came on board, she made some suggestions as well, and those are listed. So as it stands, the GM, as soon as I flip to it, pardon me, the updated schedule has removed the items that India requested, and those will be discussed later and housed elsewhere if need be. Any questions?
Any questions from the committee members? Okay, barring none. Do we go ahead and do we need to approve this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so since there are not any questions, do I have a motion to approve the schedule as presented?
Motion to approve.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Schedules are approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just for the record, Dr. Francis Haver just joined us, so he's here also.
All right, moving on. 1600 Secretary Treasurer, Raj, this is you. So the previous notes are from 2017. It was actually under the Board of Trustees where it was discussed to separate Secretary Treasurer and put some items that were previously on the 1610 schedule onto this new schedule. So if you look at the proposed schedule, you will see that those items are listed. Any questions from the committee?
None from me. All right, I see heads shaking. In that case, do I have a motion to approve the schedule for the Secretary Treasurer?
So moved.
Thank Thank you. Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And the schedules are approved. Next one, Sherry.
2100 legal, and Dawn is on point for this one. I don't think you have to go up there. Okay. There were several discussions or several items discussed in November of 2017 committee meeting. Those were implemented along with some potential other changes as far as, I think, is it transactional, Dawn, that was added?
Don, would you?
The changes represent truly an updating from an old schedule to more clearly identify the titles of the actual records. So so the records are more easily identified. It also includes a combination of the administrative labor and transactional sections. Some of those records are maintained together now.
Okay. Any questions from the committee?
Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve 2100 legal department schedule?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
6002 DGM Finance.
And that would be you.
That would be me.
One change is the department number. It went from 1240 to 6002, so that's reflected in the proposed schedule. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that, Raj?
I do not. Just leave it open for the committee members to see if there are any questions. Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the schedule? Do I have a second? Anyone?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. All right, the schedules are approved. Thank you. 6,000, accounting.
So these were previously 6,000 and 6,020 grants accounting was previously discussed in November 30th, 2017 committee meeting. Several changes, suggested changes were made. 6,000 was separated from 6,020, so there are two separate schedules. John, did you want to add anything?
No, I think what we did is trying to make sure all the things were accounted for, and by splitting those two up, because grants is definitely have some different retention periods than regular accounting schedules. That's kind of why they were pulled apart.
Any questions from the committee for 6,000?
John, just more of a refresher. Did we conclude on the canceled checks, et cetera, as to how we're going to incorporate those into the record retention schedules?
Yes, what we can do is our current vendor, we have the ability to download those checks on a CD, and we can do that monthly, and we can go back for at least 2 years.
And I'm trying to find that record.
It's 6001.01.
Yep.
0.1.
Yeah,
With the
so
retention
cancel
period
checks for
of current
accounts
year
payable,
plus year.
payroll, grants, and employee activity funds, current year plus one.
So that is so current plus 1 year is a retention period.
Right. So we will have at least 2 years worth of records in our retention or in our possession at any period of time.
Thank you. Thank you. Any clarification, any questions from the committee members? Are there any more items on the grants or the payroll schedules?
We didn't get to that one yet.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. We'll approve all three in one shot if that's okay.
Right. So then 6020 grants, again, that was separated, listing all the pertinent items that fall under that department. Any questions or comments on 6020 grants accounting?
And once again, for the benefit of the committee members, these items were included on 6,000 accounting schedules, but because of the requirements, different requirements that apply to some of those records and the retention periods being different in grants, the schedules have been separated.
Like Raj said, you'll see a lot of the grants themselves, we have to keep work papers for 26 years after the grant is completed. It's an odd number, but yes, 26 years after the grants are completed.
Sherry, over to you.
6050 payroll. Again, that department was discussed November 30th, 2017 in that committee meeting. And the changes that were noted have been made. Any questions on this schedule?
None for me. Do any of the committee members have any questions or clarifications that they need? No. All right, hearing none. I'd like to see if we can have a motion to approve 3 sets of schedules that John Taher just discussed and presented. 6,000 accounting, 6,020 accounting grants, and 6,050 payroll. Do I have a motion to approve these schedules?
So moved.
Second? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. New business. Ms. Lewis.
All right, so new business, we have 2 departments presenting. These schedules were recently approved in 2019, and upon the request of the departments, they need to make some changes. So I'll call Transit Police up to the podium, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Officer Coons, Transit Police. Many of the amendments that we're trying to get changed on our current, or the most recent one that we passed a couple years ago, is just to reduce the amount of time frame that we're holding on to some of these records. We find that we're holding on to, compared to most other major cities in Ohio, we're holding on to these records way too long. So most of them up through 3,427 are ones that we currently have records for, and 3,428 through 33 are the new items that we're proposing for the retention records.
Can you clarify, sir?
I'm sorry?
Can you clarify that again for me?
So most of the items that are on the retention schedule, we already have a retention period for. Some of them we're asking to drop down, such as misdemeanor case file retentions. We've been holding on to those for 20 years when the statute of limitations is 6 years. So for us to hold on to something that long past the conclusion of the case is a bit excessive. Those go all the way through. Everything we have is currently on record through 3,427, the project manager contract files. The new items are 28.28 through 0.33 on the proposed list in front of you, covering the body cams and GPS records.
So if you like, I have the sheet from the changes that were made. Would you all like for me to go each one? That way it'll be more clear. So for 3,402, reports was taken off, so it'll just be duty assignments, and it went from current plus 15 years to current plus 3 years. That's the suggestion. 3,400.08 was completely removed. Bear with me. From that, everything shifted in their numbers, so just make note of that. When you go down to case files, 3,413, which will now reflect as 12, in parentheses, they're changing it to homicides. They've added case files for felonies and then separately case files for misdemeanors. All of which, let's see, case files for homicides will go from 20 years to 30 years. Case files for felonies, 12 years except homicide as the retention schedule, or retention period, I'm sorry. Case files for misdemeanors, retention period of 2 years. And then at the end, the body-worn cameras and vehicle GPS items were added.
So I'm not familiar with the standards to know what they should be.
And that was going to be my question also. At these retention periods, what was the guidance where, how do we determine the retention periods on the schedule?
Are you referring to the body cameras?
Well, general question, but yeah, that happens to be one that I'm looking at right now.
So, like for the most of the case files that we have under the misdemeanors and the felonies, once again, for the state of Ohio, most of the major cities, Cincinnati, Cleveland, and Columbus, all have very much lower retention periods for the paperwork itself, as far as like the big files that we keep. A lot of the data is now captured and stored on Spillmen reporting system, but as far as keeping the big binders in the storage facilities, once that case is resolved, then we start the time clock as far as how much longer we hold on to those. And if it goes to appeals, the clock stops and we hold on to it.
I mean, is there a governing statute or state law that that provides the standard? I guess my issue is that I just don't know the standard, and I understand what you're saying about paper versus electronic, but I feel at a loss to know how to vote or because I don't know the standard.
So ORC, Ohio Revised Code 2901.13, actually defines the statute of limitations, and they break it down as far as how long the clock has to run before a case is actually brought before the court or a prosecutor. So once that timeline's been established for various crimes, then we can break that down into how long we want to hang on to the paperwork after that.
So I think hearing Tony's express concern, probably what we need with the combination of Shari in her office and the transit police office is to have a clear presentation, and I'm going to ask maybe for a PowerPoint that says, hey, here are the changes, and then here are the statutes or the regulation that makes that a reasonable one. And so I think in the current format, that's not clearly stated, and so probably we'll ask the group to come back so that we can see the movements and see the statutes that govern that recommendation.
Answer, thank you. Took the words right out of my mouth. And while we're at it with the additional questions, when I look at the newly added items 3400.28 onwards on the body-worn camera with the electronic media, I just look at the items and how we're differentiating between permanent and critical incidents and non-critical incidents. I mean, I think it would be useful to have some definition as to how we distinguish between those items.
We anticipated that, so I'm going to defer to Sergeant Schreiner, who's in charge of the body-worn camera program.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I actually can provide everybody with a breakdown of them. As far as permanent is any fatality, anything that involves a drug overdose or sexual assault. Let me preface this with, I actually researched Cleveland Police Department, Cleveland State, Columbus, and the Cleveland Metro Parks, and ran a comparison of policies and records retention schedules to try and figure out a good time frame and how they broke them down. A lot of them they all have variances in how they broke them down as far as to what crimes they are considering and what categories they break them down into. This is an amalgamation of kind of what I see as a best suited thing, and we communicated with legal and gave them that spreadsheet with a breakdown of all the crimes that are listed in each category. As far as, so permanent is fatalities, sexual assaults, and any drug overdose, including motor vehicle accidents that involve a fatality. Critical incidents would be all felonies, police canine deployments where force is used. Non-critical incidents are misdemeanors involving citations. Non-evidence is exactly what it says. It's non-evidence. It's things we do on a daily basis where we interact with people, but it does not become part of a case file. And then administrative is broken down to vehicle inspections, equipment inspections, 911 call box responses where we interact with nobody, and accidental activations. I have it on my thumb drive.
This is what we have here.
Okay. We actually broke it down by category. Bear with me a few minutes. Okay.
So I just, for the committee, I just checked with Don, a legal team from the legal department, which included
Janet Burney, R.J. Roberto, Brian Gutowski, and myself.
Worked with the police, Transit Police Department. Was it on the body-worn camera piece of this?
Yes, with respect to the body-worn camera policy itself and the record retention, the portion of the records retention schedule that relates to body-worn camera videos. And the Transit Police shared with us, Tony, the schedule that they had put together of the various municipalities and the length of time that they maintain these records. I also did some research. Transit Police did some research. There's not a lot of guidance in terms of case law that says how long you're supposed to keep these things, but the idea is that you need to keep them long enough to meet, as Sergeant Schreiner mentioned, the statute of limitations for a case. In other words, if you have a felony or a homicide, you need to keep that record long enough for the case to proceed. That's really the standard.
So a couple thoughts in my mind are, does the pilot conclusion have any bearing on changing any of these records retention periods?
Not the pilot conclusion. I would actually like to, so we went very conservative with these. Cleveland only holds things max 5 years unless it's a permanent category, and we share their permanent categories. They're extremely similar, with the exception of one category, which I included for canines. So it's not the conclusion of the pilot program. It's, I want to get more public records requests and then provide data points to see how long cases are taking to conclude and what those public records requests entail from a time frame standpoint before I lower it. For the most part, these places are keeping them like Columbus. They keep them for 90 days. After 90 days, if it does not become part of a case, it's gone. If it becomes part of a case, it's only 2 years, other than a permanent category, and that's it for their records retention. Cleveland is 90 days, 1 year, 2 years, and 5 years. So we are actually going above and beyond what other departments are doing. Other than a permanent category, the Metro Parks is the only one I found that has a category that goes for 10 years.
Is there any, I'm looking at the other, I'll say from 01, 3400-01 down. Is there any link between the body-worn cameras and any of these other records, schedule numbers, to where that they have to be in synchronization? In other words, I'm looking at you're catching me on the fly here, but I'm looking at some kind of a
Say like
Spillmen
like
record,
Spillmen.
some kind of a or some kind of a criminal history report, that says you got to keep something a certain amount of time, but then we didn't maintain the body-worn camera information in the same period of time. I'm looking for any links that any consideration for links between the body-worn cameras and the other stuff.
Okay. Are there links on that paper? No. Is it good practice to keep body-worn camera as long as you keep a report? Yes. Again, we've gone above and beyond with the body-worn camera, and there is no case law that I can find. There is no recommendations from the state. The recommendations that's included in the ORC code that Jason read off are for physical evidence. So the state currently does not have any recommendations for body cam. So if anything, we go a little bit beyond what we're keeping physical records from.
So just for clarification for me anyway, I look at 3400.01 and I see the Crime Star report portal where you're keeping records for current plus 20 years. Is the body-worn camera video uploaded to Spillmen and maintained there, or is it something that's separate that should be kept in the same case-by-case basis for the same period of time?
So body-worn camera is actually kept in what we call evidence, or is called evidence library. It is provided by WatchGuard, which is a subsidiary of Motorola. It is their own server in the cloud, so we have nothing to do with it. Once that camera is docked and that video is uploaded to evidence library, that's where it stays for whatever retention period we decide to set.
So then if there is a requirement to keep a report in Spillman for 20 years, there's the risk that the video in that library has been destroyed or deleted or removed prior to that 20 years. And I think that's the link that I'm uneasy about. I just don't know enough. And then my last question was, is there any restrictions from that third party to where you can't keep video that long? You know, as long as for the longest period of time that you need to.
Yes, the contract states 10 years.
Okay.
So we have 10 years of unlimited storage per camera. After that 10-year period, we would have to come up with another solution or renew the contract with WatchGuard.
Sergeant, I have one question. When we deal with Motorola subsidiary that you named, these copies of the retention schedules of the periods provided to them for monitoring, and they destroy it upon the expiration of whatever the date would be?
No.
Or do we control that process?
We control that process.
Okay. So what I get a sense, obviously, is I think the committee members, and correct me if I'm wrong, need to do a little bit more research, and I would ask that the transit police come back, perhaps even include some sort of a presentation to educate us a little better as to what the source of the ORC, and we got these descriptions, etc. And the suggestion that I would make is that maybe we need to, in some shape or form, even define within the body of these record schedules as to what kind of events get classified as permanent versus critical, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because once these are all public documents, so I want to make sure that these are as complete and as complete as possible, so we limit the questions that are likely to come our way. Lance, did you want to add something?
Yeah, Raj, I'll just ask if when the Transit Police Department comes back, if they could invite their legal counterpart to come back with them, and so that all questions can be answered.
Okay.
Thank you.
You probably, I would add, you probably, not probably, you should address Mr. Garofoli's question about the 20-year versus the 10 years that our contract says. His concern is you have a matter that on your schedule that the record is supposed to be retained for 20 years. If a video is a part of that matter and we only keep it 10 years, how does that impact us?
A lot of this is contingent upon our storage practices will be contingent upon this being approved. So once it's approved, if you all say, well, you need to keep this record for, well, obviously anything that's kept permanently, we'll need to move that to somewhere locally. Right now it's stored on WatchGuard's server. So at the 10-year mark or 8-year mark, anything that needs to be stored permanently will be moved somewhere locally on a server here at RT or somewhere else that we, another place that we identify as storage space.
So then you would meet the 20-year, your intent is to meet the 20-year requirement for the body-worn camera video if it involves whatever on your schedule that you have to keep for 20 years. Am I being clear?
Yes. So anything, the only thing on a schedule on this suggested or recommended timeline that exceeds the 10-year mark is a permanent retention category. And Raj, to speak to the itemization that you were looking for, as you'll see, it's spelled out: homicide, sex crimes, overdoses, any fatality or dead body, etc. It identifies the exact incidents or offenses or videos that would be required for that time period. So that's the only thing that exceeds the 10-year life of the contract that we would need to store locally or identify a space where we're going to store it. And we haven't prohibited that space from being with WatchGuard, depending on, we would have to work out a contract with them to extend their retention periods for us. But anything that's required to be stored over 10 years now will be stored. There's no intentions of that will not fall victim to the contract.
Yeah, I'm looking at what Tony was looking at, 3400.01 Spillmen Crime Star Report Portal. And the retention period is current plus 20 years.
Okay.
And that's his question.
Is this new?
If the body-worn camera video is something that is a Spillmen record or part of a Spillmen record, how will you maintain that record, that video record, for 20 years?
Okay. So if we have the record in one place for 20 years, we need to make sure we have it in another place for 20 years.
Well, let me chime in, and thank you for this. This helps out a lot. This chart you gave us, where it has critical incidents 10 years, and I'm guessing that the 10 years is based upon the current agreement you have with WatchGuard. But when I look at the statute of limitations that you handed out, it speaks to 20 years for some of these other offenses. And it looks like some of these offenses in your 10-year category are also in the 20-year category in this statute.
So the statute that you see is not for body-worn camera.
I understand.
Okay. So we looked at Columbus, we looked at Metro Parks, we looked at agencies that were similarly situated to ours, and we also looked at Cleveland and another number of other agencies to see what the standard was as far as body-worn cameras go. And we built our body-worn camera retention policy based on that standard. But I think what I'm hearing you say is that you might like to see it mirror those standards for.
Well, I don't know. Well, this tells me what the law says, and this tells me what your body-worn camera current policy says. So I'm just trying to match up the body-worn camera schedule with the statute of offenses that you gave me. So I'm not trying to overcomplicate this, but where it matches, where it's a 20-year crime, it should be 20 years. And I can't tell from this record's retention schedule.
Okay.
So if I may step in, and unless any other comments from any of the other committee members.
I'm sorry. I do want to add this small tidbit. So for the category list for BWC, we do want to make sure, we'll make sure that these are listed under the descriptions on the actual retention schedule. That way that provides clarity in that aspect. I understand there's still other things we need clarified, but that additional information would help to define the permanent, the critical incidents, et cetera, et cetera. That's all I wanted to add.
That is correct. And once again, just want to state for the record that we're not disapproving the schedules, et cetera. The committee really is looking for some additional information so we can all make a better decision.
No, we need to be clear in what we're asking. So,
Right,
we appreciate the questions.
Right, and we'll schedule another time and maybe a more detailed presentation. We'll allow more time to you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate the
We
presentation.
appreciate your time.
Hey, Raj, before you leave, Commander,
Yes, sir.
if it's possible, as one of the units that you're looking for the best practice for the body-worn cameras, given that one of the questions that's being asked is related to the ORC, if you could see what the Highway Patrol has as their policy, that may help to have the crosswalk because they both are keepers of the ORC and have body cameras.
One of the things that Sergeant Schreiner was going to point out is that the retention period that you see set is for physical evidence. Okay. There has been no standard or law established for retention periods as far as body-worn camera goes. So we'll look at the Ohio State Patrol, OSP, see what they're doing. Did you research that?
Not OSP.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Sherry, 6400 procurement.
Thank you. So as Melinda makes her way, I will begin to point out some of the changes that they are suggesting to make. 6400-03, they removed the 1 month time frame, so it'll just be 3 months after contract execution for the retention schedule. For 6400-07, 08, and 10, the retention schedule will change to active plus 7 years instead of active plus 3 years. 6411, current year plus 3 years.
That's it.
And that is all.
Thank you. I was going to run through the detail, but I appreciate that.
No problem.
First of all, I want to thank Dawn and Cherie. Dawn is the one that identified that there was a change in our ORC, specifically, just so Tony asked this, let me make sure I go on record, ORC 2305.06, contract and writing. There was a change in that. There was Ohio law has changed the retention time frame for a lawsuit to be filed against a contract. Statute of limitation is 7 years, which affected our approved record retention schedule from October of 2019. So I updated those sections to accurately reflect the 7 years now. And while I was updating it, Cherie took advantage of the fact that I was doing that and asked that I add some clarification to 03, which I removed 1 to 3 years and left it at 3, total of 3 years. And under 64...
3 years or 3 months, I'm sorry.
3 months, yeah. Sorry.
Just making sure.
And 6400.11 under supplier application, I put current plus 3 years, so...
Any questions from the committee?
I just want to thank you both.
Welcome.
Thanks, Melinda. Any comments from the committee members? If not, do I have a motion to approve the schedule for 6400 procurement? Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Schedule is
everyone.
approved. Thanks again.
Thank you.
If it was me, I'd hold on to them forever, though, you know.
All right. Anything else, Sherry, on your schedule, or do we just...
So the next is just a notification to the committee. I will be submitting 2 additional schedules, OEO and DGM Legal Affairs, and this is just simply due to the department number or cost center change. And as you all know, that's with regard to our records, the department number is how we classify everything. So these two will be submitted again simply to show the change in the department number.
So Shari, just so that I understand completely, the records, the retention periods in these departments have not changed. It's just the numbering system.
Correct.
Thank you. All right. Anything else that you wanted to add?
That's all.
Thank you. All right. I think we've concluded the business that we had scheduled for today. Our next meeting will be held on a date to be decided. Notice will be given to the public prior to that meeting and other meetings that may be scheduled as needed. Thank you, everyone. Motion to adjourn. Second. All those in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you very much. We're done.
Thank you.